Let's go ahead and listen to Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg. He's speaking after Sacramento Councilmember Sean Laloie just resigned this afternoon. Let's listen in.
There is a difference between criminal charges and the questions that led me to call for his resignation last week. On the criminal side, I have not prejudged whether he is guilty or innocent. And I said then in my statement, and I repeat today, anyone charged with a crime, a serious crime, is entitled to due process. That is not what my call was about. My call last week, and the call of the majority of my city council colleagues, so not just me alone, the majority of my city council colleagues, was different. Serious criminal charges involving alleged fraud and obstruction create a cloud, not only over Mr. Laloie, but the city itself. These serious criminal charges are simply incompatible with continuing in public office, which is why I think he did the right thing by resigning. Secondly, the court order that he agreed to as part of his release when the indictment came down raised serious questions about his residency once again. His resignation is in the best interest of the city. Regarding filling the vacancy, I will consult, of course, with my colleagues, but here is my initial thought. There is a multi-candidate race to succeed the now resigned incumbent in District 2. If any one of those candidates wins a majority of the votes and thereby avoiding a runoff, they would not be sworn in for a new term until December of 2024. If that were the case, and if a candidate were to win outright, I would recommend strongly to my colleagues that we appoint that individual the following week. If no candidate wins a majority in March and there is a runoff, I would recommend appointing a caretaker to the seat. I will recommend to my colleagues that we do not fill the vacancy until after March the 5th. Because to appoint a caretaker now would mean that if a candidate won a majority, that individual would not be able to start for 8 or 9 months, to the disadvantage of the district, which would have then chosen their preferred candidate for a full 4-year term. That's my statement. I'm happy to answer your questions.
I have a follow-up on the appointment, but I want to ask you this. Sean Laloie, in his first 30 seconds, called you out. What is your response to what he had to say about you?
Yeah, obviously Councilmember Laloie is under a lot of pressure. And I just wish him the best. That's all. He did the right thing, and I wish him the best. I don't have a reaction. I'm been in this business a long time. I stand by everything that I have said and done, always in the best interest of the city. I wish him the best.
If you don't mind, that follow-up on the appointment, you said this is your initial thoughts. What is the process to making a final determination?
Consulting with my colleagues. And ultimately, I don't make the decision. My colleagues and I make the decision. And so we will have a session on this within the coming days, consult with the city attorney about how to best do that. And we will go from there. I'm just sharing with you, as I've already shared with a couple of them, what my advice will be, because I know and the reason I'm doing it now is because I know this is going to be a question that's foremost in the mind of the residents of District 2 and many in the city. And given that the primary election is now about 2 months away, that's a short enough time to, on balance, say, let's not fill it with a caretaker now. Let's see if somebody wins and appoint that person if they win. And if they don't, and there's a runoff, well, then we will still have the remainder of the term to appoint somebody who can represent District 2 in the meantime until the new member wins the November election and goes from there. I will say that I suppose just like the deferral process with redistricting, that between now and the time we fill the vacancy, there's only one elected representative for the district, and that's me. So I will do what we have done in the deferred areas of East Sacramento and other parts of the city, and my team, Chinua Rhodes, Director of Community Engagement, and my entire team will represent the people of District 2.
And Mayor, obviously you've had some time to reflect on this. Is there something different that could have happened in this process?
Well, first of all, you know, I'm not, and certainly the city is not responsible for whatever a United States attorney chooses to do in moving forward with very serious criminal charges. And like I said, in the criminal context, anyone, including Councilmember Laloy, is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. And, you know, there is a difference between widely reported allegations, which we all took seriously, and a formal federal indictment. Formal federal indictment with detailed charges. Again, criminal case, that's one side of it. The other side of it is the distraction and the cloud over the city and the city council for the council member to continue serving. And so he made his own decision. I think he made the right decision.
Mayor, given that cloud.
All right. Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg giving a press conference after Sacramento Councilmember Sean Laloy of District 2 announced earlier today that he's resigning. Darrell Steinberg saying that he believes Laloy did the right thing by the city. He also wishes him the best as he faces a number of criminal indictments. And furthermore, to fill that seat, it's only 2 months until the primary election. So Darrell Steinberg saying that we should wait until the primary election to see who's going to fill that seat. In the meantime, he and the rest of the council say they will fill the gap for District 2.
And he also mentioned that he believes Laloy did make the right decision, especially since he called for him to make that resignation last week.